You're listening to Engage, the podcast for Delta pilots.
This is an Engage special update. Here's your host, Ryan Argenta.
This is an Engage update. I'm here with the MEC Chairman, Jason Ambrosi, and the Negotiating Chairman, Eric Criswell. Gentlemen, welcome back to the Engage podcast. Thanks for being here. So we just wrapped up another week of mediated negotiations. Eric, I want to go to you. Tell me how this week went.
We wrapped up last week with the company and the mediator. We were primarily focused on 12 and 23. We mentioned in our last notepad, we've got a few items that were still outstanding in section 25 as well, which is the medical, dental, life insurance benefits. And we were able to come to an agreement of principle on that section last week as well. So that's the bright spot for the week. We were able to close that out. There's some great improvements there. We came into this negotiation with some of the most expensive health benefits in the industry, and we're going to exit it with some of the most reasonable and one of the best plans that's out there. So we're excited about that, but really the roadblock to making further progress has been in section 12 and 23. Of course, 12 is hours of service that has things in it such as rotation construction and fatigue mitigation and duty limits. And of course, section 23 is scheduling. We're aiming for quite a few improvements in both those sections that are long overdue and will improve quality of life with Delta pilots going forward. We've made some progress in those sections. There's some items that the company has put on the table. We've done our best to discuss them to the extent that we can, but we do understand that any kind of forced productivity is just not acceptable. So for right now, things are kind of slowed up because there's a few items on the table we feel is just too far, and we just aren't going to be able to move forward until we come to a better resolution on those items.
I want to be clear from the horse's mouth, both the MEC Chairman and the Negotiating Chairman, we are not accepting any concessions, correct?
We've heard loud and clear from the pilots, no concessions. We hear that all the time. And I will piggyback on what Eric said about forced productivity. Forced productivity is a problem, and it's not something that we should entertain in this process. We hear it every day from our pilots. Rotation construction is bad. Our schedules are at an all-time low. Worse than 2019. We hear it every day from our pilots. And that's a focus of this negotiation, is trying to get ourselves back on track. So we'll keep that front and center as we move forward.
Very good. What are your concerns going forward? What are the obstacles in a path of achieving a truly industry-leading contract?
So we've gone through the last couple of years. It's kind of been a meat grinder for our pilots. We've been out there flying record overtime. The Delta pilots have been stepping up with plenty of productivity that they have voluntarily engaged in. And that's a construct that our contract is built on. Trying to force that is something that's foreign, and we're just not interested in that. I will say that Delta pilots have shown consistently through this whole process that they're willing to do what's needed to keep the airplanes moving, but trying to put that in the contract is a bridge too far.
The way I said, we don't need long-term solutions or permanent solutions to short-term problems. Once the staffing gets back to where it's supposed to be, where it's historically been prior to 2019, prior to the pandemic, these are not issues. These things have been in our contract for a long time. So permanent solutions to short-term problems is not something we're needing to address.
That's right. I mean, we went through the COVID period, the drawdown of the airline, and then the rapid build back of the airline has highlighted quite a few areas that we feel need improvement in the contract. And as a result, there's been a lot of temporary situations that both company and our pilots have found themselves in. We're not looking to create new rules to address these, one-off, somewhat unique situations that have been highlighted by COVID. We're looking to make improvements. The Delta pilots have earned the right to ask for improvements this go around. We've been out there flying during the COVID period when a lot of the world was at home, and we're way past our amenable date. We're ready to put this contract negotiation behind us, but that doesn't mean we're not expecting some significant improvements.
Very good. What's going on with global scope?
Now, this is something I've been involved with almost the entire time that I've been on the negotiating committee. We first started having discussions over global scope in 2018. At that time, it was a priority for the Delta MEC. We got limited engagement from the company on it. It's been festering in the background as JVs have continued to pop up, as the company has continued to take ownership stakes in carriers, foreign carriers. So it's been a priority for the Delta MEC as long as I've been involved in ALPA work. Going back about a year and a half, Mr. Bashan made a comment to the MEC that he would direct his team to see this through. And they did that. It took quite a bit longer than anyone originally envisioned. We were at the negotiating table for the better part of 10 months, just hammering out details of what this agreement could look like. And now it's been a number of months since we came to that agreement to come up with contract language that is going to govern this thing. We have not taken this task lightly. This is a very significant achievement on behalf of the Delta pilots. This is a big deal. This agreement is going to live forever, or at least until it's modified down the road. And we believe many other pilot groups are going to follow suit because what's in there is very good for the Delta pilots. As far as the language writing goes, again, it's a complicated endeavor. The contract language is about 20 pages long as we sit right now. There's numerous examples to make sure that what we meant at the table and the way that it's implemented down the road, that stuff takes time. We're doing it in parallel with Section 6 negotiations where we're meeting every other week. It takes time to prepare for Section 6 on our weeks in between. There's reasons for the timeline being what it is. The biggest of which is that we really want to get it right and we don't want to rush it. I will say this, the agreement has several provisions in it that count the ramp up of Delta coming out of COVID. One of the central tenets was we didn't want to count the rebuilding of the airline as growth because that's really just getting us back to where we started from before COVID. So we don't give any credit for growth as the airline's still recovering from COVID. And there's very specific measures in the agreement that have that goal. We envision most of that snapback from COVID to continue over the next year. And as a result, there really isn't anything left on the table as a result of a longer time frame. What I mean by that is if we would have had an agreement to vote on back in June versus in the next month or two, there's zero difference in the outcome for the Delta pilots. And that's a really important key takeaway here is that there's no downside to spending the time and getting this right because it is very important. Now, with that said, there's a very strong desire to have this be a separate ratification. So you certainly will get the opportunity to vote on this. This deserves your attention. We're going to get educational material out so everybody understands exactly what's in the agreement, but we're excited about it. It's coming to an end real soon. And you'll be the first to know as soon as we can get the details out there in public.
And to piggyback on it, I, as a pilot that'll be flying under this, appreciate the excruciating detail that you and your team are taking in making sure that language is right, because the company has committed to 1-for-1 equitable growth for Delta pilots going forward. And that's huge. Like you just said, devil's in the details. We want to make sure that the language supports that. The language is right.
Yeah, 1-to-1's not just a tagline. It means something. And it's a pretty simple concept, but it's very complicated to make sure that it actually happens the way that we're all envisioning. And that's really been the crux of this negotiation is putting on paper what everybody knows 1-to-1 to mean, which is if our partners grow, we have to grow to at least match or exceed them. And that's what this agreement does. We've taken a lot of time to make sure that it does that. I'll give a shout out. We've got former scope chairman has been on the negotiating committee with our team for the better part of 5 years. He brings a wealth of knowledge on that section of the contract. He was the scope chairman prior to being on the negotiating committee, and he's been a huge resource in this whole process. On top of that, our current scope committee does an excellent job, and they've been involved in the process as well. They've got a great perspective on this piece. They've been at the table negotiating with us, and we're excited about the outcome of this and looking forward to getting it out in front of the pilots because it's a huge step forward in our scope section.
It was something that the Delta pilots want to fix. We don't like seeing joint venture partners with wide body jets at all of our hubs flying our passengers. We understand that joint ventures are never going away. It's something that we're going to have to work with, but we wanted to try to address this while the pandemic was going on. Our MEC heard the pilots loud and clear that this is a major concern for the pilots and challenged Ed Bashan to address it. And Ed committed. Not to talk about global scope too much because this was meant to be a negotiating and Section 6 update, but also having a remedy that spells out what will happen if the agreement's is not lived up to. So that's huge. I look forward to getting that out there for the pilots, as he said, and letting them weigh in on it.
I want to bring up the MEC unanimously voted in a resolution on retro pay. What exactly does this mean for pilots, and how is this different from the way you've previously done business?
Coming out of the MEC meeting in Boston, the MEC unanimously approved a resolution adding retro pay language to the policy manual. For those that are unfamiliar, the Delta MEC has a policy manual which has procedures in place that govern the way we do business. There's other governing documents for ALPA, but the Delta MEC policy manual has language that directs what we're doing. As you may be aware, the policy manual has language that says, for example, LOAs will go out to MEMRAT. That the ratification process is part of the policy manual. Well, now the MEC has added language that says that retro pay will be part of any Section 6 agreement. What does that mean for you and the negotiating committee at the table?
Well, we are 3.5 years since our last pay raises. Our pilots have been severely affected by the inflation over the last couple of years. Had we had an agreement by the amendable date, this would not be an issue. But Obviously, COVID intervened there for a while, but the truth is we could have had a deal a long time ago. And any kind of deal has to come with retroactive pay. Otherwise, you incentivize the company to drag it out in the future. So we are completely committed to minimizing the retro pay out of this contract. The MEC has passed policy manual language that must be followed now. The MEC is 100% committed to it. And quite frankly, it's the right thing to do. And there's no reason that it shouldn't include retroactive pay for those wages that are lost.
Yeah. Another resolution that came out of the MEC meeting is the Delta MEC unanimously approved a strike authorization vote based on movement at the table. What does that mean? What does a strike authorization vote mean? A strike authorization vote does not mean that a strike is imminent. The Railway Labor Act dictates when self-help is permitted, and we are still on mediation. The first step in this is if the mediator says, okay, there's no more movement to be made, that they would declare an impasse, and that starts that process towards self-help. Why do we have this vote? A unified pilot group is our ultimate leverage at the bargaining table. Management needs to know that the Delta pilots will go to distance to get that contract that we've earned. This is one of the most powerful weapons in our arsenal. Does it mean we will go on strike? It does not mean we will be going on strike. It means that you are authorizing your elected leaders to call for a strike after the NMB determines that further mediation isn't productive for us and will not help us in the party. That will end up triggering a cooling off period. After that cooling off period, then if there's still no agreement or there's no expedited negotiations, it'll be, if it's absolutely necessary, at that time we can engage in self-help. But to be clear, this is something that will help move the needle at the negotiating table if and when the MEC decides to execute that vote based on movement at the table. Remember, our goal is never to go on strike. Our goal is to negotiate a tentative agreement that you will review and ratify. And the MEC does not take this step lightly. It's a serious decision, and one must be prepared when the negotiators indicate it's time for you to weigh in, that you vote in favor of a strike authorization ballot.
Yeah, we've been kind of stuck in the mud on scheduling and quality of life issues for most of the summer. But I will say the company has not made a comprehensive value proposal with pay rates or with real proposals on retirement or vacation. We've had some exchanges loosely on those topics, but there's been really no value package offered to us. So at this point, that's really where we feel the negotiations must mature to really understand where we sit. And when they make a proposal, we hope that it's in the zone of reasonableness for us. And we hope that it's acceptable to the Delta pilots, but let's be realistic. It's probably going to take a bit of a fight. We're here at the table ready to have that fight. And we just need to know you're behind us. And the company needs to know you're behind us. And the strike authorization ballot is an important piece of this process, just to send that message that you're behind us. None of us wants to go on strike. That means that we weren't able to execute on the desires of the Delta pilots. And that's not where I want to be. I want to bring an agreement that is successful. I want to bring an agreement that the Delta pilots are proud of and that they'll ratify soundly.
So final question, what do you need from the pilot group? What do you need from pilots? Eric, how does wearing the lanyard, the hats off, and picketing support you and the negotiating committee at the table?
You know, our committee was out there at that last picket on June 30th. It was great to see the turnout. We picketed in Atlanta. We had somewhere near 500 pilots show up in Atlanta that day. And that was a pretty neat thing to see. And it really gave us a lot of confidence at the table that our pilots are behind us. We need that to continue. On the first when this picket's going to happen, we're actually going to be at the table that day. And knowing that nationwide Delta pilots are stepping up and showing their support while we were at the table that day would be extremely meaningful to us and to this process. So please do show your support, continue wearing your lanyard, commute into this job to walk through terminals. And we see a lot of green lanyards and a lot of people saluting us with hats off. And we sure appreciate all that support. And it's not just us that notice. The company notices this too. And they notice that our pilot group is engaged and notice that our pilot group has high expectations during this contract cycle and willing to fight for the improvements that are on the table for us here.
Yeah, I couldn't echo that more. The fact that our pilot group is unified right now, that we're together, we're standing shoulder to shoulder at picketing events, we're engaged at pub events, we're engaged at giving feedback to our elected union representatives. This is awesome. It just shows how powerful the unity of the Delta pilots will be in getting us a truly industry-leading agreement that our pilots have earned, not deserved. They earned it. This is something that, as Eric said earlier, the pilots really stepped up all through the pandemic and now in the recovery and worked really hard to be the frontline leaders of Delta. And we're here to make sure that we don't let you down, that we get you a contract that you're proud of.
And like Jason said, you know, it does feel great to see out there the pilots supporting us, but at the end of the day, you know, that's not what we're aiming at. We're aiming at a contract that is befitting of Delta pilots and one that you burned. I could walk across the street with my team today and have a deal for you by next week. There's no doubt in my mind that there's a deal sitting there to be had right now, but it's not one the Delta pilots have earned and deserve and that are expecting. And we're here to do this. We're here for the long haul. We're here to follow the guidance of the pilots. We're here to see this through and to come out of this with a contract that everyone's proud of.
I couldn't agree more. And with that, I appreciate you joining me today. And I look forward to standing shoulder to shoulder with everybody on September 1st at the picking event. I'll be here in Atlanta.
MEC Chairman Jason Ambrosi and Eric Criswell, the negotiating chairman. Gentlemen, thanks for being here.
Thank you all and look forward to talking to you soon.
This has been Engaged, the podcast for Delta pilots. Thanks for listening. My name is Ryan Argenta. Stay safe and keep the rubber on the road.
You're listening to Engage, the podcast for Delta pilots. Follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcast platform, and receive notifications when a new episode is available.